for a closer look at how violence in school could be prevented, if at all. We're joined by Dr. Gary Slutkin, director of the Chicago Project for Violence Prevention at the University of Illinois School of Public Health. Good morning, Dr. Slutkin. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
Obviously, you're looking at ways to prevent violence, so I suspect you're coming up with some risk factors. In general, what risk factors do you associate with violence?
Well, our work is principally focused on the highest risk situations, and our approach to this problem is understanding it as people who have grievances and then feel justified to do this. So we have outreach workers, and now I'm speaking largely of the Chicago situation, but the ceasefire program is now working in Newark and Baltimore and Cincinnati and some other places where our outreach workers are actively looking for people who are in situations where they have an active grievance. And the list of grievances is enormous, and most of them cannot be completely addressed, but what we can do is connect with them and talk with them. And the people we hire to do that are people who are believable and trustable to the highest risk people.
So
now, the work that,
I'm sorry, so when...
The work that we do in Chicago is of a much, much higher risk circumstance than, a quiet college campus. And we've actually prevented probably between 700 and 900 events over the last 3 years that could have been shootings. A situation like this, people are pretty much asleep to even the remote possibility. But there are, I think, a lot of unhappy students, a lot of unhappy people who, are on some fringe of some kind of thought process. And the question is really who can reach them, who can anticipate. And that's what we need to do, because in the realm of prevention, we're really not thinking about threading the needle enough usually. We're thinking about something very, very young, or we're thinking about law enforcement, which basically has an after-the-fact realm here.
Right, and certainly we'll look a little bit at what is similar and certainly what's different between what you're doing in cities and what's happening on campuses. But certainly not everybody with a grudge is going to kill somebody, let alone kill dozens of people. What's the thing that separates that out? Have you found something that can help you identify somebody who's angry with a grudge who will then go on to commit a crime or do violence?
Well, I think that a lot of the knowledge of individual circumstances is contained in the people who are doing the outreach themselves, because they can sense when someone is no longer rational or is starting to talk about or consider unusual things. Now, there's certainly a lot of high-risk events. I mean, if something happened to you, if an event happened to you, if your brother or son or father were, for example, injured or shot, those are the highest risk circumstances. These emotions triggered by love angles, as your last guest said, most of them will not go this far, but still people need support systems. But I think we spend a lot of time trying to figure out the differences between and the motives for these individual events. I mean, a few hours ago people were wondering, is this a love thing, or was he bullied, or is it a grudge against the school, or is it even possibly something ethnic or racial or terrorist? And there's much more commonality in these realms, and it's basically a grievance, a belief, and then a follow-through with the idea that you're justified in doing something.
Dr. Slutkin, one other aspect that seems very common to many of these kinds of situations is that they're young men. So what do we know about that?
Well, I mean, this is the 15 to 25-year-old age range is the highest risk age range for anything in the realm of aggression or violence. But it's not, it doesn't contain it all. It contains about 2/3 of it.
What about mental illness? We had heard that, in fact, a lot of the people who commit crimes like this are not suffering from some sort of diagnosable mental illness. Is that true in the work that you're doing as well?
Yeah, well, not only in our work, but I mean, you look at the state of America. I mean, there's 20,000 or so murders a year, and there's about 800,000 that have occurred over the last 35 or 40 years. And mental illness is such an incredibly trivial part of this. And what you have is basically normal people who have either grown up with a lot of violence around them or are being fed a lot of grievances and then get riled up, or they find a way to rile themselves up, and then the act occurs. I mean, most of the people who are doing these acts were perfectly normal in terms of their mental health status as children, and as recently as, you know, a day ago or a week ago.
Dr. Slotkin, do you think that this situation and the kinds of things you're working on, but particularly what's just happening now, do you think that's going to reopen the conversation about gun control?
Well, it undoubtedly will reopen the conversation about gun control. Whether it changes anything, I don't know. I mean, it certainly would be better if the guns weren't available, but there'd have to be so much more done that it's almost not feasible. I mean, for example, everyone has been talking about Virginia's gun laws being so lax, but you know, our experience is that if he didn't get it in Virginia, he could have got it in Mississippi or even many other states. So, you know, our work is really focused on changing the behavior and the thinking, because our sense is that people get guns if they really feel that they want them or need them, unfortunately.
And I would suspect that along with changing the thought processes of anybody who's about to commit violence, it's about the people who surround them in terms of what they can do as well. That it isn't necessarily about immediately turning somebody into the police, is it?
No, I mean, the police cannot get wind of most of the shootings and killings that are happening, and their job principally is enforcing the law, that is, catching people if they cross the line. So I think the principal strategy that's been missing in most of our cities, and probably in the rural areas as well, is a much more concrete, replicable, specific, strategic approach to prevention that looks at what's going on right now. And that this is what we call intervention. This part of the formula is largely missing in most of the cities.
Dr. Slotkin, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We hope you found this edition of Healthy Life informative. To find out more on this story and other health-related topics, we invite you to go to our website at abcnews.com. And as always, we encourage you to get personally involved in our program by visiting the Dr. Tim On Call section of our website. There you can send us your feedback and questions by video or email and suggest topics that Dr. Tim might address right here on Healthy Life. Thanks for joining us today. From all of us at Healthy Life, we hope you stay healthy.